Welcome guys to Horror, Crime and Fear, a new YouTube channel telling you stories about horror, crime and other subjects that I find scary or intriguing, like the paranormal or even war stories. We also have these stories in podcast format on Spotify, Amazon Music and pretty much everywhere else you listen to your podcasts. Today's story is titled Suicide Mouse, A Walk Across Town, and comes from Reddit user Nacho or Creeperkidchannel. Alright, let's get into the story. If you know who Mickey Mouse is, there's a chance you've known about his first ever episodes. They were black and white, accompanied with some snazzy music, and Mickey would always do fun stuff. Well, there was one that wasn't in any DVDs, any wiki pages, not even any news article. A cartoon so bad that Disney themselves wants to rub it off history. I'm Samantha, and this is my story of one of the first lost Mickey Mouse cartoons. Growing up, I always loved watching these old Mickey Mouse cartoons. I was poor, so my mum would just borrow tapes from other relatives of mine and put them on the TV for me, instead of putting on Disney Channel or whatever. These tapes were old, and I mean it, from the early 50s all the way to Steamboat Willie. I remember being spooked out by the Mad Doctor the most. However, there was another Mickey cartoon I vividly remember being called A Walk Across Town. It was the last cartoon my mother bought before she ended her own life. It wasn't because of me, or some work issues, or anything. She seemed happy and content with her life, so why? I never got the chance to watch it, since me and my family had to move away from my mother's house after her passing. But I've wondered for ages.
What was inside that cartoon?
Well, cut to a decade and a half later. I'm 28 now. Deciding I'd want to visit my old house after years, I drove there with a friend of mine, William. I wanted to cherish some childhood memories with him, but little did I know, I'd been met with childhood trauma instead. My house was there, now old and decrepit. It was tragic seeing such a warm and cozy house of mine like this, but no one had been here ever since we moved out, so it was no wonder. When we walked in though, something was off. Everything was unnaturally black and white. The walls, the floor, the furniture. I'd think it probably just decayed if it weren't for the fact that the materials in this house just don't do that. I didn't remember my house looking like this at all. It was a dark shade of brown at most. William didn't know, so he was just feeling uneasy at the cobwebs. For now, I just shrugged it off. William was about to joke to me, saying that my house was haunted. I gave him a glare, thinking that it was a little insensitive of him because of my mother's passing, even though that obviously wasn't his intent, but I did have a strange feeling that this house wasn't what it should be. After all, I was a heavy believer of the paranormal, which William thought was silly. That was when we noticed static coming from our living room. We checked to find something shocking. The television was turned on and had white noise. Someone was here, but we didn't know who. Then I noticed that there was a tape on the floor, and when I checked the label, there it was, the dreadful A Walk Across Town cartoon. I suddenly had an urge coursing through my veins. William looked at me like I was acting off. My vision was going fuzzy. With the feeling of curiosity overflowing my mind, I pushed William away. Then I stuck the tape inside the player. I turned the television on, and then my mind snapped back. I didn't know what that was. I've never had a feeling like that before. William looked at me in disbelief. What the hell, Sam? What was that? I looked at him with a guilty expression. I don't know. I'm sorry. He was still agitated at me, but he understood. He knew my fascination with Mickey would get out of hand at times, even if that wasn't really me back there. It didn't feel like it, so I tried my best to be myself after that. Me and William sat down on the dirty sofa as the TV counted down to 10. We took cobwebs off our bottom and backs and watched. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It started off straight away. No title card or anything, which was odd. Other Mickey Mouse cartoons back in this period always had those title cards with Mickey and Minnie to give you an idea of what the cartoon was, but not this cartoon for some reason. In fact, it was not like any other cartoon I've watched too. Mickey Mouse was walking in a straight line in the pavement of a city which seemed to loop over and over again. Mickey himself had a pitiful look. He was depressed, with tears in his eyes and a rope in his hand. Instead of the happy cheery music, in its place was a depressingly heart-clenching piano piece to set the theme. Occasionally, images would flash on screen. It showed Minnie with a taller mouse with a hat, scarf and pants. It showed Mickey with a broken cartoon heart and a devastated, teary look. It showed Mickey attempt suicide numerous times and failing every single time, whether it was out of sheer luck or failure. Accompanying those images was what sounded like an argument between Mickey and Minnie, with Minnie showing her disdain for Mickey and saying she never liked him to begin with. It's like the cartoon itself wanted you to feel bad, and it worked for us. I was teary-eyed. I loved this cartoon mouse since I was a kid, so it hurt me to see him depressed and contemplating suicide. Meanwhile, William was also holding back tears, since it gave him memories back when he himself had a breakup with his ex-girlfriend too. I gave the poor guy a hug and tried my best to comfort him. The depressing cartoon lasted for around maybe 3 minutes before it eventually cut to black. Everything cut off, the crying, the music, but it felt like it was still going. It was like it ended, but it didn't. We could still hear Mickey's crying, though faint and quieter, with him saying self-deprecating stuff like, "Oh, how could you, Mickey?" What really shook us, however, was the sudden change in Mickey's voice. After the first minute of the blackout, his voice turned more maniacal sounding, with some bits sounding like he was trying not to break a snicker. He was now rambling about death, happiness, making others suffer with him, and spreading his misery. He sounded like he had lost it. Was this even Mickey anymore? In spirit, definitely not. Then, the cartoon resumed on the 6th minute or so. Mickey went back to walking in the same city, but now there wasn't any flashing memories or sad music on screen. Instead, there was just the faint sound of murmuring and slight crying, but it didn't come from Mickey, at least it didn't sound like it. The mouse now had his hands on his pocket and a wide smile. His eyes looked down on the floor at first, but when the murmuring suddenly got louder a few seconds in, Mickey's eyes wrinkled and looked up, with his smile shaking. Then the 7th minute hit. Colours appeared across the background that shouldn't have been possible during the black and white era. The loud murmuring turned into various painful, blood-curdling screams. Men, women, adults, children, any type of voice you could think of, all screaming in unison. Mickey's eyes melted off their sockets and rolled to the bottom of his chin. His smile became a toothy, clenched and much wider grin, with it reaching the top of his very own head. The sudden change startled me, but not William, even though I knew he was the type to be terrified at things less worse than this. I looked at his side and noticed that he had a wide smile of his own too. I was disturbed at this sudden change in scenery and thought of sitting up and turning the TV off. However, William told me to sit down with an enthusiastic voice, which was unlike him. I've never seen him so happy and maniacal before. "Are you crazy?" I retorted, but William didn't budge or say anything really. He just gave me an eerie glare, so I shakily sat down at his request, feeling like some force was making us watch this insanity. The buildings became rubble floating mid-air with fire behind it, and the sidewalk was navigating in various directions. Fire spread behind the buildings. The screen began to shake, and the screaming got louder. Meanwhile, I could see the other screens across my house, security cameras, computers and whatnot, display the episode too. I heard the same words repeat in my head.
Death is the only way.
I was never suicidal, nor did I have thoughts like these, so I was obviously uneasy. I grabbed the remote from the table and attempted to turn the cartoon off. However, static just flashed when I pressed the off button, and the cartoon continued. Looking around, I noticed William was gone. Frantically, I searched around, only to hear stabbing sounds. When I went to check, I saw him on the floor, filled to the brim with blooded holes and about to pass away. My own best friend, who I've known since high school, committing suicide right in front of me. I tried to pick him up. I tried to treat his wounds with any cloth I could find, but it was too late. I was teary-eyed and on the brink of having a breakdown. Was it my fault? Did I hurt him one day or something? I thought I was a good friend. I heard the same words from earlier repeat in my head again.
Death is the only way.
I couldn't tell if it was my fault, or if it was that damned cartoon that had some sick side effect or something. Maybe that voice, he heard it too, and unlike me, who had a roughly good life after I moved out, he was inches close to ending it himself because of his own tragedies. I went to check the living room, and I was now at the ending card, missing the last part. Whatever the last part was, I didn't care, and I didn't want to know. It had Mickey's face with that damn smile that I remember back in all those other cartoons, and the broken music box that set the stage. The cartoon faded to black, with the last few seconds showing text that read,
The sights of hell brings its viewers with it.
I thought it was over. I thought maybe, just maybe I was safe. I got the answers to this damn cartoon, but was it worth it? I brought my friend with me, and now I'll never see him again. I can't think whether I should be mad at myself or this cartoon. Regardless, I was devastated. I shouldn't have brought him with me. But I didn't have much time to think. The TV was still on, with static and white noise on the screen. The other screens across the house played the same static and white noise. Before I knew it, I heard another loud, blood-curdling scream coming out of the screens, which almost left me paralyzed. I heard that mouse's voice again. The cartoon wasn't over yet.
Real suffering ain't known, pal. Not until you finally give in to your strongest desires.
I instantly ran out of the house once I heard that voice. I didn't hesitate whatsoever. I was not going to be his next victim. I didn't care what came after that episode. Heck, I didn't even turn it off. Not like I could since the remote wouldn't function earlier, so it was probably still playing or something. He took my friend. He took my mom, but he wouldn't take me. I slammed the door after I left. I ran into my car. I drove off as fast as I could and as far as I could. The mouse that I once cherished and loved could never be seen the same way again, not in my eyes. Now, here I am. I'm in therapy right now, dealing with a voice in my head that I've never had before. It torments me every night, saying that it was my fault, saying that I need to join him, but my therapist says otherwise. She's been giving me medicine good enough to treat it, and I'm slowly starting to feel better after that incident. I miss William, I really do. I don't even know if it was my fault or not, but we were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. What has been done cannot be undone, but I ask you, if you ever see a medium-sized wooden house with cobwebs around it, and if it has a black and white interior where you can hear static, I advise you not to go inside. That cartoon dies with this story. Okay, that's it for today, guys. Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you liked today's content, then please smash the like button. And please consider subscribing to the channel so that you can listen to future stories from horror, crime and fear. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and we have a Reddit as well, with all of those named Horror, Crime and Fear. Please comment below, and please get in on the action on our Reddit, sharing stories and chatting with our members.